Everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Speedplay Touggourt Episode 4. I'm going to be trying to get these out quicker just so we can finish the series hopefully before the next patch comes out. Right now we're in a dumb sort of war on the side of the Ottomans, and we're integrating Morocco. Morocco has a relatively high liberty desire, but hopefully we'll be able to keep them in their place long enough that we can actually integrate them. Although that's going to be the main concern right about now. We also don't really have great colonial range, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I send a force over to Rome, just out of the vague hope that they wouldn't have any defenders, but they do. And from there, just sort of sit and continue back. We have terrible tech, which we're really going to need to address. Luckily, we have a very good heir. So once we manage to lose our king, we will be able to make good progress with that. Now, we're going to try to get this next military tech, and hopefully that means that Morocco won't be as desirous for independence, but they still are a little. We're going to defeat that by just raising a couple mercenaries. Unfortunately, we don't really have any money, so what we're going to do is just lower our army maintenance so we can build a couple more regiments really quickly. We won't actually really be able to afford our army, but we don't have any serious threats right now, and as soon as we integrate Morocco, we can drop the amount of regiments we have down a little bit. We defeat a rebellion in Tripoli, and from there, we just take another diplomatic idea and wait to integrate Morocco. We've maintained pretty good relations with the Ottomans. We're going to try to get Morocco back up to 200, and hopefully that'll help. What I'm also going to do is try to improve relations with Castile, as they are a really significant power. There we go, we have integrated Morocco, and now we can sell a bit of their army and begin to fabricate a claim on Tunis. What we're going to do is fabricate a claim on Tunis and also on the Mamluks. It's basically the same plan as we've always had. We're also going to colonize a little bit of South America. Luckily, our king just died, so we have a new and much better king, and I'm just incredibly pleased that that happened. This is a great thing. We're also going to now declare this war. We pull our forces back from the Mamluks, though, because we need to take out Tunis first and foremost. The Ottomans are busy in another war, so we do have time, and hopefully we won't even need it. So we just move out and immediately attack and destroy their army. We lose a naval battle, which has kind of become our thing. And yeah, this is pretty good for us. We begin moving some troops so we can move them against the Mamluks. But ultimately, this should be fairly easy. The Ottomans, as you can kind of see, are in a bit of an issue. Unfortunately, they just pieced out so they can bring their forces down to bear against the Mamluks, which makes this a bit more of a race. Luckily, and well, unfortunately, they managed to attack one of our armies. I'm not sure where Tunis is actually getting their men to do these strikes, though. So we begin moving our forces across. Hopefully Tunis is finished with their random strikes. We have to move one of our forces away from the Mamluk armies just so we don't lose it. With the Ottomans in pretty large numbers, we move to just take a direct line between Jerusalem and our country across the North African coast. The point of this is that we really want to take a direct line to Hejaz, although that's probably not realistic. The most important thing, though, is that we get as much as possible. You see, the Mamluks try to break our siege of Jerusalem, but we defeat them. And we're in a fairly alright spot. As long as we can stop the Ottomans from piecing out on their own and taking something that we really don't want them to have, we're in a pretty good spot. And we weren't going to annex the Mamluks in this one war anyway, so it isn't too much to worry about. We do annex the entirety of Tunis and raise autonomy in all the provinces so we won't have to deal with them. We don't actually have enough admin points to core their entire country, though, which is a bit unfortunate. What we do is stop coring the two closest to Tripoli, which will eventually sell to them. Once the war with the Mamluks ends, and we are now at the carpet sieging stage, so that won't be too long. Although we don't want to peace out with the Mamluks too early, we want to core a couple of these provinces before we actually make peace, just to assure we don't get overextended. Other than that, though, we're in a fairly good position. We go back to improving relations because we really can't afford to get poor relations with any of the major powers around us. And we're going to ship a few more men over to the colonies and build another colonial fleet. It's time that we explore the Caribbean. We're also going to move another colonist as far forward as we can, and now we can make this peace with the Mamluks, in which we get a straight line to Jerusalem, and also just because we can, also Sinai. So with that all done, we get the Conquest of Jerusalem bonus, and we start selling those two provinces to Tripoli, so they'll core them for ourselves, and we'll only have to spend Diplo points. And we're just going to wait until our war exhaustion gets a little lower to core the provinces we took from the Mamluks. Our tech is still a little bad, but we're in a very powerful position. Unfortunately, our relations with the Ottomans dropped a little bit, not so much though. And we raise autonomy in all these Mamluk provinces and begin to colonize near the Caribbean. We don't actually make it to the Caribbean just yet, and after a quick reshuffle of our cabinet, we have a bit better of advisors. But in the near future, we're going to just try to explore the coast of the Caribbean and maybe fabricate a claim on Hejaz so we have somewhere to expand. Luckily, we're in a fairly alright position. We move an army over to the coast and start building a few ships so we can attack Hejaz more directly. Although realistically that might not happen very soon, or at all. Our tech is still a little bit bad, but it's catching up. And there we go, we're beginning to explore. We core all of the regions we took from the Mamluks. And now it's just a matter, we have the vision so we can move in and take over these Caribbean islands. So we move one of our armies over to just begin doing that. Fortunately for us, there's a large European war. It looks like the Protestant Reformation has gone quite well. Hopefully that'll lead to a very large religious war that'll keep the Europeans distracted in the future. So now we have our fleet ready. We can maybe move into Hejaz, however, Yemen has fallen to rebels and we would have used them as a base of operations, so it's not really all that realistic. Instead, we're going to focus a bit more on the colonialism and probably just move more into the Caribbean. At this point, there's a large war, still the old war. France has begun to just dominate Spain, though, which is rather good news for us, because Spain is the more likely power to be a concern, as they do have a very large presence in the Caribbean, and really throughout the New World in general. Ultimately, though, it's a bit of smooth sailing. We're going to probably try to colonize into the Cape to get Europeans to not be able to spread to Asia. However, we don't even have the range to get to the southern coast of Africa or even the Sub-Saharan coast of Africa. So what we do is fabricate a claim on Yao, and we take this opportunity to raise our tech a little bit. Spain just loses their war against the French. It's not a very significant loss, but it is, noteworthy. And it looks as though the Papal State is only allied to Byzantium and a few other choice countries. So we may be able to do something about that later on. Spain, views us very poorly, so that's concerning. We move our forces over to Yao in order to begin our conquest of their country. I don't really anticipate very much in the way of resistance, as it is a whole bunch of Sub-Saharan African places whose tech shouldn't be much better than mine ever was. Unfortunately, I kind of misplayed the initial move. I was hoping to destroy their army, but that kind of just fails. Tripoli sends some forces over to help, and ultimately, it'll just be us kind of just exploring the region. We don't actually have any maps of the area, so we're going to be moving into Terra Incognita, which is always dangerous. One of our colonies finishes, so we keep going. And what I end up doing is just sending the force down and splitting it so we can explore more quickly. However, and this is kind of the moment I realized that I made a terrible mistake, they bring a very large force. I begin constructing as many men as the force limits will allow, because this suddenly isn't just a war of conquest, it's actually a significant war that we're going to have to fight. And that's unfortunate. The Ottomans call us to arms, but it's just one of those wars against Byzantium, so it's no concern to us. If it was a major war, then this would be pretty terrible timing. We finally integrate Tripoli, which is great news, and we begin moving our combined force. It's not really a combined force anymore, it's just our force, since we integrated the Tripolitanians. I'm not sure how you say their name. At any rate, we begin to siege the provinces. We leave large forces in every siege just to avoid any sort of collapse. I kind of split the forces up a little bit. Hopefully it won't be too much of an issue. But we really do need to explore the Terra Incognita if we're going to win this war, just because the delay for moving your troops forward is too significant if we don't. Unfortunately, I was a little fast and loose with my army there, and we lose a battle, sending our men fleeing up all the way back to our capital. We fight another battle, and it basically goes just as poorly, with our forces once again going to the North African coast. We explore a little bit, but mainly just play conservatively with the remaining forces in the region. We also try to explore. The main thing is exploration. As long as we can move as quickly through their country as they can, we don't have any threats. We continue colonialism, and there we go. We launch a three-prong attack on their army, which is one of the first victories we get in this war. Unfortunately, our truce with the Mamluks is nearly over, so we make a really limited gains in the peace deal. The reason I didn't press for more is because that was supposed to be a small war. Unfortunately, Spain has blocked our path in the New World, which is worrying. But anyway, that was supposed to be just a war of opportunity, not an actual war where we had to fight. Now, back to the Mamluks, though. We can't call the Ottomans in because we're already fighting a war on their side, and they don't want to be called into multiple wars on our side at one given point. However, the Mamluk army is very small now, and we have a rather significant force, so what we do is just declare war straight on the Mamluks alone, and begin to just carpet siege them. We do send a bit of a force down, and the Ottomans just made their peace. We can call them into this war, but we don't really need to, so I don't. We siege a little bit, and just sort of look out for that one Mamluk army, which we're going to have to fight against. And unfortunately, the Ottomans took this opportunity to declare their own war on the Mamluks. So far, we've been using our joint wars on the Mamluks to get the Ottomans only one province per war. It was basically our way of limiting their power while also using them to get the most out of our power. So it's a bit rude of us, admittedly, to be doing that, but it's really something that just is smart tactics. It makes smart tactical sense to do that. We continue just defeating armies and moving our forces up to get all of the provinces we need to get a direct line to Hejaz. Whether or not we get those provinces in this war, it's important that we stop the Ottomans from getting them. If the Ottomans get those provinces, then we will never have a direct line until we declare on them, and we are just not powerful enough at all to do that. At least not at the moment. Later on, possibly, but we really want to risk making as few enemies as possible. And with all that done, we begin carpet sieging the Mamluks. We lower our military maintenance because there's really nothing we need it for. It'll limit the ability of us to fight some of our sieges, but that doesn't really matter all that much, as we can just bring the sieges that will complete over to help the sieges that won't anymore. Now, really, the biggest concern is what the Ottomans are going to take from this war, so we're going to have to, in part, just limit what they can take, and in part, take everything that's important to us. We can kind of count out having a path to the northwest of the Terra Incognita, or the wasteland there, but that isn't too much of a loss. So we try to make peace with the Mamluks. Unfortunately, the peace goal that we want is 101 points, so we get the next best thing. and we release Funge so that we don't have to directly integrate anything in East Africa, which we're probably going to go to just because it's a fairly easy fight, although with a bit of attrition. So we raise our autonomy in all these provinces, and we just immediately core all of that. We have been lucky in that we've built up a very significant admin and diplo point, basically a large surplus of them, as we've kind of given up on keeping up with the text, but the longer we wait, the cheaper the text will be, and it isn't really all that important. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe,